Here we go. Hello, I'm April Rovero. I'm the founder and the executive director of the National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. Welcome to our latest lived experience interview series. Today, we're going to be interviewing Nick. And Nick is actually an outreach director for NCAPDA. And so we've been really enjoying his volunteer support over the last several months. And I believe that his story is going to be a very interesting and educational experience for everybody who's here today. So I would like to introduce, to start out with, the two who will be actually conducting the interview. That's Charlie and Riva, who are youth ambassadors with NCAPDA, and then Nick himself. So Charlie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's go ahead and get started.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Nick, thank you so much for joining us here today and, really having an openness to share your story. We really, really appreciate it. And Riva, thanks so much for coordinating with, all of us on this interview. And that being said, let's just jump right into it. So Nick, right now you're in recovery from an opioid use disorder. Can you share with us how your addiction began and some of your experiences in active addiction?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. My story is one that I think is important because it starts with it's understood that there are certain risk factors for substance use disorder in general, and I believe that my life, all the way up until my addiction began, my substance use disorder began when I was 27. I don't think I had any of the risk factors. There was no childhood trauma. There was no family history of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I was never even exposed to it. So I never knew personally anybody that had gone through their own personal struggle with an addiction. And so my only understanding of it and the way it was in my head was just what was represented on TV and the media and in books.
Right.
And anecdotes. So this, I understood like in principle what it was, but this kind of didn't make it, it kind of wasn't a real thing for me in my head because I couldn't, associate it with a real person or someone I cared about or someone who's even their story I knew.
Yeah.
And so, well, basically what happened to me was I was 26, almost 27 at the time, and I was working in a hospital. I was on my plan was to go to medical school. And I was doing a post-bac, taking some of the classes and getting some experience in healthcare, working in the hospital. One night after an evening shift, I came home in the rain and was walking back to my house and slipped and grabbed the top of a street sign to try and brace myself, which my hand ended up sliding across the metal and
oh gosh.
Cutting my hand open, severing the digital nerves, the tendons, and the arteries in 3 of my fingers. And it was a very serious injury. I went to the emergency room and had to have a very involved surgery to put my hand back together so I could, maintain function. The tendon being severed, I couldn't move my hand, my fingers, and the nerves, I didn't have feeling. So it was a big deal. The surgery was a success. So I got through it. The surgeon was confident that I would have function after recovering from it. And as part of my pain management, because there was a lot of pain and it was a legitimate, it was a real surgery and I had severed nerves. So he had prescribed to me a very large quantity, which doesn't happen anymore, of oxycodone, which is a powerful opioid, with almost no caution other than one sentence, which I think was very insufficient. Told me that the prescription or the medicine could be habit forming. So could be and habit forming. It was very.
That's really ambiguous.
Yeah, it's what he should have said was this is such a dangerous addictive chemical. This one pill has the potential to completely change and shatter your life to pieces. So I took that prescription home and at first it did work for the pain and I needed it in the beginning. I felt like I needed it. But something happened when I took that first pill. It seemed to, it gave me a feeling and it seemed to fill some sort of void for me, that felt like it had been missing and I needed it. And eventually, he had given me like 2 months, like more than a month worth of the medicine, um, and I don't even think I needed it for a month. Like maybe in the initial couple of days, but honestly, after that, I was taking it mainly for how it made me feel. And at the time, I remember like counting down the minutes to the next time when I could take the next dose because I was following the directions for the first week or two, and I would look forward to it. And I didn't realize at the time how much of a red flag that was, but eventually, I allowed myself to take an extra one. I probably told myself in my head, and I did at some point for sure, that I felt like I needed it for the pain was worse, or you know, um, why not just take an extra? And um, I ended up taking a couple more each time, and throughout that first month, um, you know, even having gone past the point when I didn't need them anymore, I was still taking them, um, and I wasn't aware of it at the time. But this was the beginning of my substance use disorder, and it uh, like I was still taking classes, I was still in school and still working, and the script ran out. Eventually, I found a way to get the medicine illegitimately on the internet, and when I found that that was a possibility, I didn't hold back, and I gave myself permission to keep taking it recreationally, and to use it, uh, and never realized at the time that like this I was slowly investing myself in this medication and in needing it and using it as a coping skill, or not a skill, using it as a coping mechanism for any problems I was having in life. And eventually, tolerance built so fast for these opioids that the amount I was taking didn't really do anything for me anymore, and I was slowly becoming more and more reliant on it, psychologically addicted, as well as physically dependent on it. So when I would get low or wouldn't take enough, I got sick. Um, and it was reinforcing my behavior, from both ends. If I don't take enough, I feel horrible, and if you know I also want to take more because it makes me feel good when I'm taking it. um, and Eventually, because of the tolerance and there's no ceiling for opioid tolerance, um, I went on to stronger medications and different ways of using it, um, until eventually I ordered heroin, and I ended up doing IV heroin, to maintain this. It went on for years, and I did get into medical school, and this was happening during my first year of medical school. So I even rationalized that, like, obviously I'm performing fine, so this is not a problem. But it's not a problem until it is one, and it was a problem the whole time. That was just a rationalization, a form of denial.
Yeah, you're just pushing it away almost.
Yeah. So eventually I couldn't perform academically, and I had to drop out of school. And this had been my dream, like this was my major aspiration for my life, and like what I wanted to do as a career, and like be the best person I could be. And now I was trading that dream in for, like maintaining this addiction. And I I told my family and my friends that I was having a nervous breakdown. I lied to them. I was using in secret, and I resigned to the fact that that was my life, and that I was not going to be a doctor, and I was going to just keep using in any way I could. I was so invested in the drug at that point that, um, and it was also reinforcing it. The more it made my life, um, the more it devastated my actual life, the more I relied on it because it felt like it was the only thing I still had.
Mhm.
And eventually I hit a rock bottom where after 5 years, 5 years or so from getting the first prescription, I was forced to basically make a change and either quit or, if I hadn't made a decision to stop at that point, I either would be, dead today, um, or still using, which I believe was not living. Like it was more like I was a ghost or a zombie, and all the important things in my life had taken um, backseat and weren't priorities to me anymore. So um, yeah, so it was about 5 years of active addiction before I finally stopped.
Mm. Thank you for sharing your story. You know, it's like crazy how like just like one small step at a time can eventually like compound. I think that's like really scary.
Yeah.
Charlie, do you mind if I insert one question? I'm curious, we know that fentanyl is such a big deal on the streets now. Nick, did you encounter any fentanyl? That
Yep.
was what, 2.5, 3 years ago. Did you actually end up getting something on the street that ended up having fentanyl in it?
Yes. Yeah. So after using heroin, they called it um, uh, China white heroin, but it was fentanyl. And in the end, that's what I was using. It's a stronger version of an opioid. It's stronger than heroin, and it's incredibly lethal because of its potency. Um, so I mean, when I say I might be dead today, I think about that and how dangerous it was to be putting that substance in my body. And the amount of overdoses that are happening, fatal ones from fentanyl, are just insane. So
It's escalating everywhere in the country.
yeah, so I definitely encountered it.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. We're not able to hear you, Reva.
Oh, you're not? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So thanks for sharing that, Nick. Can you share something from your recovery experience, like your support system, your treatment experience, and how you maintain sobriety nowadays?
Yeah, sure. So I feel so grateful that I am, able to be a recovered person, a person who recovered from a substance use disorder. And I owe, credit to all of this amazing support that I got when I finally had to stop using. Um, and the thing is, though, that these people, they were there. They were there during my addiction. But I didn't let them in. I didn't ask for help, and I lied to them. If they in any way threatened my use, I cut them out of my life. And so, but I was so lucky that they are still there when I decided to stop, and they're still there today. Families, friends, um, everybody I met in recovery that were going through the same thing as me, in the 12-step groups, the self-help groups, the treatment programs, um, like my therapist, my psychiatrist, my parents, my family, my friends that, have been friends with me, before I even started using. And, um, one important thing I did was I cut everybody out of my life that was still using.
Mm.
And I completely dissociated myself from anybody that might, not be supportive in that way, because they're sick themselves. And I don't think that there's, I had to be selfish and not be around other people that, could threaten my sobriety. Um, I went into treatment to rehab, a residential one, for 3 months. And then I did an intensive outpatient program for 1 year. Um, and it was really, that's where I met everyone that shared my experience, I could connect with and bond with over, trying to struggle with it ourselves together. And today, I I'm so grateful to have them in my life, constantly reminding me how important these things are, and how it's a lifelong struggle is to maintain the recovery. And
So Nick, your form of recovery is more the 12-step approach versus the medication-assisted treatment, also known as MAD approach, right?
well, yeah, so I during my addiction did try, after almost dying from an allergic reaction to injecting the drug. I tried to stop, and I tried methadone, which is a medication-assisted treatment,
Right.
and it didn't work. I ended up getting addicted to that and using on top of it. So when I finally decided to stop, I did not use any medication assistance. I used, I used 12-step programs, but I would say a more general way to a more accurate way to say is I used the socialization around recovery, like the recovery community,
Mm-hmm.
to that was the way I got, that's how I succeeded, I think, is connecting myself with other people that were going through the same thing. And a major component of that was going to 12-step groups.
And how long has it been for you? It's close to 2.5 years, I believe, right?
Yeah, it will be 3 years this May. So it was May 21st, 2018.
Great, it's working for you, obviously. That's great.
Yeah, no, Nick, it's great to hear that you had a really extensive support system and that your recovery process is going pretty well. And so looking back at it, it seems that you had like a pretty legitimate reason to be taking the pain medication, but knowing what you know now, how would you have handled the situation differently since you know their addictive potential?
Well, you mean like if I had to be prescribed them now, or if I could go back in time the first time?
Yeah, if you like were transported back in time with like the knowledge that you hold today.
Well, you know, I feel like the surgeon should have given me more of a caution about it.
Hmm.
I think one, it was like I think he prescribed too much with too little information and education around it.
Yeah, that's for
Um,
sure.
I think that, you know, if I could, if I could go back in time, I would say I don't think I need that much. I don't think, if I need any, I only think I need a couple days of it. And if I knew then that it would do this to me, I would probably do all I can to not take it at all. I think that if there's any way I could have gotten through those couple, 4 days of pretty bad pain, uh, I would have, I would have endured that pain so that, 5 years of my life wouldn't have been lost.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. It was really touching to hear that. So knowing what you know today, what would you have done differently during your active addiction to get into recovery early?
So I think one of the things that I even have fantasized about going back in time and changing is asking for help early on. Um, and thinking about that, I know there's a huge stigma, and I felt that stigma while I was using. So it was not just this; it was a combination of this personal loss of control and shame and guilt over, um, developing that use disorder in the first place, that prevented me from asking for help. I was so ashamed that it happened that I didn't want to admit it to not only myself, but to anyone that cared about me. If I could go back and change that, I would have asked for help, as soon as I noticed that this was something that was taking over my life. So I think that stigma is a really important issue in terms of, I think, understanding that it's a disease of the brain. It's actually considered an illness, and that there's a biological substrate for why it happens to people was an important thing to learn along the way. That helps me. If I had been more in tune with that when it was going on, I might have been able to identify, like, oh, this is, I'm sick and I need help. Um, so yeah.
You absolutely had the support system there for you. You just felt ashamed and uncomfortable asking for it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That would certainly change now. And NCAPDA does everything we can to try to break down that stigma.
Yeah,
We all need
absolutely.
to work on that, right? So
Mhm.
even Charlie, we do everything we can, and I know you do too, Nick. So
Yeah.
hopefully it won't be so bad for others down path that need help. They'll feel more comfortable asking for it.
Yeah.
Um, so Nick, I also want to kind of shift gears and touch upon like your experiences with naloxone. Have you had any? And if so, could you share more about them?
Yeah, so naloxone, or also called Narcan, that was something I picked up at a needle exchange sort of randomly because they were offering it for free. And this was during my active addiction. And, I knew what it was. And I thought, well, it can't hurt to have it around, even though I had up until that point never needed to use it or seen anyone use it. I had heard of other people using it though. So I thought, this might be a good thing to have around. And I'm so glad that I got that because I did have to use it on my girlfriend at the time who was using with me. She ended up overdosing one morning,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and I heard this crash from the kitchen. I went over to go check on her, and she was slumped over on the counter, half against the wall, and turning blue, not breathing. Her lips were blue, and I would shake her, call her name, and she was unresponsive. And I remembered I had that Narcan, so I went and grabbed it, and I used it on her, and it brought her back. It literally brought her back from what probably would have killed her, and basically picking up that kit saved her life. Because I don't know, if I had to call 911 or something, if they would have got there on time. She didn't even know that she had overdosed after she came back from it. She thought I was messing with her. She thought that I didn't give her Narcan or anything. She just came to, and she thought she had nodded off or something. And I was like, my God, you almost died right there. And if we didn't have this Narcan, you would probably be dead.
Wow.
Well, and for those that are watching that maybe have no idea what naloxone is or Narcan, can you just do a really quick summary of?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Narcan or naloxone, it's a opioid overdose medicine. It reverses the overdose by kicking the opioid off the receptors, and it's basically there's no reason to not have it or not give it to somebody. It doesn't do any harm. It can only reverse their overdose, and it's basically like if you could have a defibrillator or something that shocks someone back to life, and you saw someone having a heart attack. That's what it's like, the equivalent of that. Like it can just literally save someone's life, and that's all. It's a miracle.
That NCAPDA does have it available, but Naloxone for All, the website Naloxone for All, is where people can go to get free naloxone mailed to them. So just to make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah, so before you went through your addiction, we heard that you wanted to be a doctor and you were in medical school. So what are you going to do today to help others who are going through similar struggles? And what are your long-term aspirations?
Well, I would say that my long-term aspirations are the same as they were before. It's to help other people, and the best way that I can do that. I think that by sharing my story, doing things like this, and doing work with NCAPDA is one of the best ways that I can help heal myself by processing this trauma that I went through, and also take this experience, which was overall a horribly negative experience and horrible experience, and use it in a way to be information that someone else can have and improve their life. Maybe someone could listen to this story and connect me and my face and my my personal experience with it to that concept of substance use disorder or addiction. And basically, maybe if I had seen, if I had had that connection in the beginning, maybe I would have been more careful in the first place when I was prescribed the medication that started the whole thing. So doing this type of work and trying to have a positive impact, and more than that, just using my negative experience to do something good and help other people is, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Well, we sure enjoy having you on board. You've got done a lot of naloxone training and presentations directly to youth that I think have been very powerful. So thank you for everything you're doing to make a difference. It is really appreciated.
And thank you so much for, sharing all your, your life story and all like the advice that we have to share today, because I think it's so important that people just, realize like the potential, the addictive potential of opioids, because I think for a lot of people, it's almost, pretty silent. They don't like learn about it in everyday life. And so I think it's super important that, we hear people's stories like yours. But for the viewers out there, please stick around. April is still going to be sharing some important resources. April, if you want to, take the wheel.
Yeah, you should be able to see the screen. So this is how you reach us. Take a snapshot of that or whatever. Visit YouTube. You probably are already there if you're watching this particular YouTube video, but we've got a lot of other ones. So please do take time to view them and become educated. And if you hold on just a couple more minutes longer, you'll get a list of other resources that will be at the end of this video. So thank you all for participating. So Reva, Charlie, and absolutely Nick, and everybody who's watching today, we really appreciate you tuning in, and also for the share that we got today from you, Nick. So take care, and thanks again to everybody.
Thank you.
Here are a few resources we hope you'll check out. If you or a friend or family member has concerns related to substance misuse, suicide, or mental health issues of any kind, contact the anonymous 24/7 hotline at 800-662-HELP. Visit NIDA for Teens website, where fact-based information is provided that can empower you to make informed decisions about using and misusing drugs of all types. Watch the What is Naloxone video to learn more about opioids, how they affect the brain, and how an opioid overdose can be overturned with naloxone. Thank you for watching this interview. We hope you have found it helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to NCAPDA at either 925-480-7723 or info@ncapda.org. You can also join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more. Thank you.